It's official. Carney is preparing to accept China's bold offer, a direct rebuttal to Trump's open threat against Canada's economy. But before we break down what that could mean, let's rewind shortly about what happened yesterday. Trump's Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick came to Toronto with a warning, or more like a threat. He said it plainly: America's auto industry comes first. Canada's comes second. He even bragged about moving auto manufacturing south, like it was some kind of victory lap. Doug Ford called it what it was, a massive threat, because that wasn't diplomacy. That was Washington's way of saying, we'll take your jobs, your markets, and your leverage if you let us. And in the middle of that noise, China stepped in. Their ambassador didn't pose. He made an offer. Remove Canada's 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles, and Beijing will drop its tariffs on Canadian agriculture, including canola, the lifeblood of the prairies. It was clear, direct, and for once fair. You lift yours, we'll lift ours.
Returning to our top story today, and that is China's ambassador to Canada saying canola tariffs will be dropped if Canada drops its tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. Let's bring in CTV News political commentator and former NDP leader, Tom Mulcair. Good to see you, Tom.
Good to be with you, Renee.
So, China's ambassador to Canada says China will drop its tariffs on agriculture if Canada drops its EV tariffs on China. How should Canada respond?
Favorably. I think this will also play very interestingly into our current negotiations with the Americans. Listening to Howard Lutnick this week saying he wanted to destroy the Canadian automobile industry, but trying to make sure that Canadians have no choice but to buy American cars, that's called pushing your luck in terms of a negotiation. Back in the fall, a year ago, before Trump was reelected, Canada made a deal with the United States that we would follow their lead and add a 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. There was frankly no reason for it other than the fact that the Americans saw that the Chinese were coming in with cars that were of high quality and were much less expensive than anything the Americans could manufacture.
Tom Mulcair said it best. Canada didn't start this trade war. We copied it. We followed Trump's tariffs a year ago just to look loyal. And what did that loyalty buy us? Nothing but threats, layoffs, and farmers stuck with unsold crops. That's not a partnership, that's punishment. And now, for the first time in years, Ottawa has leverage. Because when the U.S. threatens to gut our auto industry, while China offers to rebuild our export markets, the smart move isn't obedience, it's strategy. Carney knows that. He's not choosing sides. He's choosing outcomes. He's choosing Canadian farmers over American fear-mongering. He's choosing affordable EVs for Canadian families over tariffs that protect Detroit. Yes, automakers will complain. Yes, Washington will bark. But the reality is simple. Canada gains nothing by fighting someone else's trade war. By accepting China's offer on Canada's terms, Carney reclaims control. He can demand that Chinese EV companies invest here, hire here, and build here. That's not surrender. That's sovereignty. For years, our leaders have called it alignment. But what it's really been is dependence. Economic dependence dressed up as diplomacy. Carney is changing that story. He's showing that Canada can still chart its own course between two giants without bowing to either. And that's why this moment matters, because this isn't just a trade adjustment, it's a declaration, a signal that Canada will no longer be the echo of America's policy or the victim of its politics. Carney's move isn't about choosing China, it's about choosing Canada. And for once, that might finally mean leading, not following.
China has hit back with significant levies of its own on Canadian agriculture, including most notably on all canola products. A few weeks ago, China's Premier and Prime Minister Carney met on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, the highest political level meeting between the two countries since 2018.
It's being called a quiet pivot, one that could redraw the map of Canada's global trade. Carney appears ready to move on China's offer, drop the tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, reopen the canola market, and finally loosen the chokehold of Trump's trade war on Canadian exports. But before this moment, the stage was tense. Trump's protectionist wave has pushed Canada into a corner, forced to fight for markets it once took for granted. When the U.S. slammed tariffs on Chinese goods, Ottawa followed suit, slapping 100% duties on Chinese EVs, steel, and aluminum. It was supposed to show solidarity. Instead, it backfired. China hit back with crushing levies on Canadian agriculture, most painfully on canola. Prairie farmers who'd spent decades building trust with Chinese buyers suddenly found their exports frozen. That's what made last month's meeting between Carney and China's premier so significant, the first high political contact between both nations. Since 2018, it wasn't ceremonial, it was calculated. Behind the polite smiles and diplomatic handshakes was a single unspoken truth. Canada needs new markets, and China is the one ready to reopen them. This week, China's ambassador made it official. He said outright, if Canada removes its unjustified tariffs on Chinese EVs, China will lift its tariffs on Canadian agricultural products. No posturing, no vague promises, a direct, measurable trade swap. And for once, Canada holds the pen. Because let's face it, the Americans have given us nothing. We mirrored their tariffs only to get threats in return. Trump's Commerce Secretary all but declared war on Canada's auto sector, saying production should move south where, in his words, America's industry comes first. That's not a partnership. That's economic sabotage. Carney understands this better than anyone. He spent months rebuilding a bridge with China, quietly, pragmatically, and on Canada's terms. The UN meeting wasn't just a photo op. It was the first step in a broader strategy to decouple Canadian trade from Washington's shadow, to make Canada a player, not a pawn. The ambassador's tone made that clear. He said, in China, we say the one who tied the knot should be the one who unties it. In other words, Canada started this tariff war and Canada can end it. That's not an insult, that's an invitation. A way out of an economic standoff that's punished farmers, raised consumer prices, and strained a relationship that once worked. And then came the energy question. Could Canada double its oil exports to China? The ambassador didn't hesitate. Yes, there's appetite. He even cited new data. After the TMX pipeline expansion, Chinese imports of Canadian crude already exceed 1.5 million tons per month. That's not talk, that's trade reality.
Can I follow up then and ask very bluntly, if Canada removes the tariffs on Chinese EVs, China will then remove tariffs on Canadian agricultural products?
So if Canada removes the unilateral unjustified tariffs on Chinese products, China will also reciprocate accordingly. And if the EV tariffs are removed, then China will also remove the tariffs on the relevant products of Canada.
So when you put the pieces together, the EV tariffs, the canola standoff, the oil expansion, a pattern emerges. Carney isn't drifting toward China out of ideology. He's steering Canada back toward independence, back toward leverage, back toward a world where Canadian products don't live or die by the mood in Washington. Some will call it risky. Some will say it's naive to trust Beijing. But what's truly naive is thinking Canada can survive another decade shackled to Trump's economic tantrums. What's naive is believing America first leaves room for anyone else. This moment isn't about choosing sides. It's about choosing stability. Carney's signal is clear. Canada will trade with whoever treats it fairly. And for the first time in years, that might just mean walking a path that doesn't start or end in Washington. Because this isn't just trade policy anymore. It's a statement of intent. Carney isn't following the script written in D.C. He's writing one for Canada.
The energy cooperation will become a new growth, has already become a new growth point for China-Canada trade. And I have done some homework. After the TMX expansion project was opened, the import of oil, crude oil by China from Canada has exceeded 1 million tons every month. And in June this year, this number was 1.56 million tons.
And now it's official. Carney has greenlit a breakthrough, a quiet but decisive trade deal with Beijing. Canada will begin rolling back tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. And in return, China will lift its restrictions on Canadian agriculture, including canola. It's being called a reset, but in truth it's a rescue. Because this isn't about politics, it's about pragmatism. Carney's move restores what Ottawa lost under years of reactionary policy. Control. Control over our exports, our markets, and our direction as a trading nation. He's made it clear that Canada won't be trapped in someone else's economic rivalry anymore. If the U.S. wants a trade war, fine, but we won't keep burning our own farmers just to prove loyalty. The deal also unlocks a second chapter, energy. After the TMX expansion, China's demand for Canadian oil has already surged past 1 million tons per month. Now with tariffs easing, Carney's government is pushing to double that flow. A new pipeline to the Pacific, new refineries, and new export routes that strengthen Canada's independence from Washington's mood swings. It's bold, calculated, and for once unapologetically Canadian. Diplomats are calling it the Carney Doctrine. Build partnerships where there's respect, not hierarchy. Trade where there's reciprocity, not threats. And for the first time in a long time, Canada is setting the tone, not echoing someone else's. Carney's deal with China isn't a shift east. It's a step forward. It says Canada will trade on its own terms, defend its farmers, and expand its reach. For decades, we've followed. Today, we lead. And this time, the world is watching Canada, not waiting for America.